EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack. John McMullen. Might not have been that long ago since the last time you heard from us, but we are right back here with you this morning for a full 2-hour edition of Birds 365 following the Eagles' very first preseason game, the first game of the 2025 campaign. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Friday morning, brother?
Doing well. Recovering from being locked in to Lincoln Financial Field last night. So, but we're here.
We're here. We're
daunting.
ready.
I'm looking at this schedule. It's daunting. Too many damn night games. I don't need them in the preseason, but it's funny. We were talking to Patrick Johnson last week, who was started on the Eagles and got waived and got picked up by the Giants, and we were just joking around and said, did you get a chance to watch him at all? Because he's close to obviously everybody. And he's like, yeah, I saw him all the time because we played at 1:00. And they were usually, and he wasn't doing it maliciously. He was just saying, yeah, I had plenty of opportunities. And that is the price of success, man. And the Eagles, it's preseason, it doesn't matter. But, I go back to Denny Green told me winning is a habit, man. They have made it a habit. Doesn't matter if it's practice and Elliott's rankings, or did they win the practice or win a preseason game or win a game that counts. They just tend to win.
That's a good habit to have, man, for an NFL team. There's no doubt.
And it is, it was pretty impressive from Tanner Mckee last night.
Yeah, good stuff, Johnny Mack. We'll get into all that. A couple guys really stuck out to me, John. Before we get into the details and the players, and obviously Tanner had such a great game last night. But I was on the air, John, for most of the game. I was doing like a play-by-play kind of thing for the people who were listening with me. That was an exciting football game for a preseason. At least it felt like it was to me. I'm watching Tanner move the ball around. I'm watching Darius Cooper make plays. I'm watching Johnny Wilson go up and Randy Moss some dudes with his big length over the top. I thought it was a fun game. I thought it was an exciting preseason game, and that's beside the point. But I thought that a lot of guys showed a lot of things. A couple guys maybe showed some reason to be concerned, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But you kind of got a little bit of everything in last night's game for the Eagles. And, I had one other takeaway, John, that we didn't talk about immediately. As my head hit the pillow last night. I don't know, 1:30 or whatever time it was. And I'm thinking, that's how most teams live with their offensive line, is what our backups looked like last night. And they looked pretty good.
Yeah, they
That's
did.
how most teams live with the offensive line. We have some jolly green giants that are incredible in the starting unit that we didn't obviously get to see last night. Tyler Steen played well when he was out there, but I thought about that.
Yeah, Tyler Steen had the big block.
Awesome block
from Will Shipley. Yeah, so and he was the only starter. Well, Jahan played, if you want to consider him a starter. So those were the only two starters that played on offense. And I was a little bit surprised at Tyler Steen, because I didn't see the value of, putting him out there from a chemistry standpoint with guys he's not going to play with. But he delivered. So, he had the big block, and he didn't play that much. That's another thing. NFL usually has snap counts out in the morning, and they don't. So I'm worried about that. And if they're going to stop doing that, then you got to wait for PFF, unless you want to do it yourself manually. So, but we'll see the snap counts a little bit later. But he obviously didn't play long, but he did a good job. And yeah, I've been talking about it. From my standpoint, I think the Eagles have about 14 NFL players on the 90-man roster from the offensive line, which is astonishing.
Yeah, it really
because a lot of teams don't have 5 in this league and have bad offensive lines. And not to say, look, I mean, Kendall Lamb started at left tackle, Brett Toth at left guard, Kendall at center, who I think is going to be a good player. Steen and Matt Pryor. Matt Pryor's a good player. That's a significant downgrade from what they have on the starting unit, with the exception of Steen. But yeah, you saw Cincinnati. All right, they don't have a great offensive line to begin with from the starters, but you saw how effective they were with Joe and Jamar. And then Jake Browning comes in, and that's it. You talked about being an exciting game. It was an exciting game from an Eagle standpoint for 2.5 quarters. And then, when Tanner left to get into the preseason vibe, and the Eagles are down to really their third-team offensive line, which is still better than all the other third-team off. But you get my point. It starts to get a little bit away from you. But yeah, I mean, Kendall Lamb is a guy who started a lot of games in this league. Matt started a lot of games in this league. Toe's been around. Kendall's got, I've said it pretty consistently. I think ultimately, probably not here, but somewhere he's going to be a starting center in this league. Yeah, it's a good group.
No doubt about it, Johnny Mac. Great group. Let's get into some of the game. That's some of the players that stood out. First one, John, and we'll get to Ringo, we'll get to Dory, we'll get to some of the concerns, but Tanner Mckee can play ball, man. That guy knows how to manage a game at the quarterback position, going through. I love the way he managed the offense. I love the pocket awareness of him. I mentioned last night profusely. Just felt like he knows where the pressure's coming, when it's coming, when to roll out, when to throw the ball away, when to look downfield. I thought Tanner Mckee really put on a great performance last night. Not only improving his stock, but I think showing the Eagles they made the right decision and moving on from Kenny Pickett, because that kid can play. Great performance from Tanner Mckee. What'd you see from him last night?
Yeah, the most impressive part to me is I said it last night on our post-game show is, him elevating guys. I've never seen Johnny Wilson be more impactful. I've never seen Anaya Smith be better. Darius Cooper, I talked about him a lot. But that was his first game that people got to see him. He's been doing that at camp pretty consistently, but, undrafted rookie, and he looks like that. And he compared it, and he's done that in the past, Tanner, compared it to being a point guard in the NBA. That's his mentality. It's his job to distribute. And when I see quarterbacks elevate the guys around them, that's when, they're clicking at a really high level. And I think that's what Tanner did last night. Will Shipley as well. I think that's what he did last night. And, that's impressive, especially and I'm surprised how much he played, especially how well he played. I was surprised. But, sometimes you want guys to get the feeling of going in the locker room, the old school mentality of going in the locker room and coming back out. That used to be the dress rehearsal, so to speak, when people would play starters, have them go in the locker room, cool down, and come back out in the third quarter for a series or two. And they kind of did that with Tanner. He hasn't played a lot of football, so, he needs reps. And the more you get live reps, the better it is, because you can do a lot of things in practice, but until you get those live reps, and you kind of saw that, Vic has talked about that from a defensive standpoint. We're not tackling to the ground. We're not trying to get the quarterback down in practice. And, you saw it early in the game when the tight end from Cincinnati kind of dragged Smile Munden and McWilliams into the end zone. You go, all right, well, these are young guys who aren't used to tackling NFL players. And you kind of see it from both ends. But for Tanner, it was all positive.
No doubt about it. Great performance from Tanner Mckee. He really does, though, control the game when he's in there, which is a great thing to see. John, plenty of other players on that offense. You just named a couple of them who really stood out. But the one who stood out the most to me was easily Darius Cooper. I'm watching that kid, and I'm like, before the game, John, I said the player I'm watching tonight is the guy that makes Howie Roseman's job difficult. That's what I want. That's the player I want to identify. And that was Darius Cooper last night in spades, Guy continued to get separation, continued to get open, continued to convert for them on third down, had a couple big plays down the field, and obviously had that beautiful touchdown over that defender where Tanner Mckee put the ball right on the money. But a great catch there by Darius Cooper. I think that kid has potential, John. I know it's early. I know it's one game. I know you can't make too much of it, but undrafted guy at Tarleton State. By the way, the great press conference after the game, too. I saw that floating around on social media when we got off the air, where kind of gave his name, gave where he's from, and just had such an upbeat mentality. I loved it. But I think that kid deserves to be on an NFL roster somewhere, just from what I saw last night. It's a small sample size, but sometimes people can play, and you can identify, and you can see it quick. I think that guy can play.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was the second leading receiver. I told this story. I wrote about him before the game, so people were reading Eagles on SI. He's been making plays consistently in practice, so that's just an extension. And then you saw it on the field last night with the lights and live action. So he's been doing that pretty consistently in practice. And that's a positive. It's not just like, oh, he hasn't been, one of that.
Yeah, right. Wasn't a flash in the pan. You've been talking about him on the show consistently. Yep.
Yeah. So he's been doing that pretty consistently. And I'm like, so obviously, that's how I led it at Tarleton State is in Tuscaloosa, to a nod to your school, Zander, obviously in the college football realm. So, level of competition is real. But it is Division I. He was the second leading receiver in Division I football. He was an All-American. He didn't get invited to the combine. Never mind get drafted. And I'm saying to myself, and I said it last night on the show, right. Scouts and personnel people have told me for years, don't scout the helmet. Don't get enamored with Alabama. Right. Sometimes you should with Devontae or somebody like that. But there are other guys who
there's a place for it, but you can't make that your exclusive process.
And they say never scout the helmet, never scout the helmet. And I think they scouted the helmet, and they said, well, he did it at Tarleton. Which, again, you have to factor that in. But anybody who sees this kid for one practice is like, all right, he's got plenty of room to grow, and the technique and all that stuff. He probably didn't have the greatest coaching in the world. I'm not criticizing. I don't know a lot about Tarleton State, but I assume, they don't have the top coaches in college football. So he probably needs a lot of refining, but just from the natural athletic skills, the fact that he can't get a combine invite, the NFL should be, looking at their process, and if this kid continues, and that's one of the things, he already made it more difficult for Howie Roseman, because I said, other teams don't get to see Eagles practice. Cleveland will next week, right. And you might see some Cleveland waiver pickups because of what they saw in practice next week down the road,
right,
from the Eagles. But all other teams get are these games. And that's what happened. I bring it up all the time with Eli Ricks a couple of years ago. Eli was not, during the summer, you said, he's probably not going to make the team. You get him on the practice squad.
He was undrafted, Eli Ricks, right?
Yeah, he was undrafted. And then he made a pick six against a fourth string quarterback. And by the way, he should have had a pick Ricks last night. And Howie didn't feel comfortable putting him on waivers and had to keep him. The Cooper may have just done that, because other teams are going to see that from last night and go, wow, this kid's got some juice and we need a receiver. Let's take a shot on him potentially. There's some, he's got some size issues too. He's only 5'11", so that factors into it.
He's built though, man. One thing to be 5'11".
He's very stocky. He's very stocky, but typically there aren't a ton of stocky 5'11" receivers in the NFL. You're looking for the old traits, like we always talk about with edge rushers and tackles. You got to have length, and if you don't reach this arm length, they're moving the inside like Tyler Steen.
Right.
That's some of the things that Darius is dealing with. Because typically you need different proportions to be a successful NFL wide receiver. But some guys can just play. Like that's Micah Parsons. When he came out, everybody projected him, not everybody, because I didn't, but most people projected him as a off-ball linebacker because his arms were too short to be an edge rusher. Well, how's that working out?
Right.
Some guys can just play. And I don't want to make that comp, because I criticize other people. Obviously, he's not Micah Parsons as a receiver, but I'm using that as an extreme example of the fact that some guys can just play, even though they don't have the measurables that typically identify success.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's plenty to talk about with Darius Cooper. I think he certainly made the job harder. I mean, obviously, the Eagles have one of the best tandem of wide receivers at the top of the depth chart, but we've talked about, John, for a long time that they don't have great depth on the outside. If one of those guys goes down, that was evident last year when those players did miss a couple of games. Now you got this kid who, to me, looks like he's the perfect fit to line up on the outside if somebody goes down or if something happens. And, again, I don't know how many receivers you think they're going to keep. If you have Johnny Wilson and Anaya Smith slotted, that gives you 5. Dotson's obviously 3. I'm keeping Darius Cooper at 6. And I happen to think, I don't know how close do you think he is to a player like Jahan Dotson in terms of skill, in terms of like what you think they're now you've seen them both at practice together. It's one thing to see him and be like, hey, that guy looks really good, but I don't know. It's only been a couple practices, right? You can't, now you've seen him in a game situation. You add that to what you've seen from practice. How close do you think he is to a player like Dotson? And I don't mean disrespect to Dotson with this comment.
No, well, they're both 5'11". Jahan, again, I would love to tell you, his pre-draft measurables, but he didn't get invited to the combine. So my presumption is Jahan's faster. Number one, he was the 16th pick in the draft. He was a 4.4 guy. Yeah, I think they're different styles of receivers. Obviously, Jahan probably weighs 190 maybe. And Cooper's much stockier. So, we were talking about comps for him yesterday. There aren't a lot of 5'11", whatever he is, 205-pound receivers in the NFL, because that's generally not what they're looking for from a measurable standpoint. And that's some guys are smaller, but they're slot, they're shifty, they're quick.
Right.
He's powerful. And you see some of the separation skill. I did see NFL, I'll pull that up, and NFL media did, have him on their list to where they did a scouting report on him, which again, why wouldn't they after what he did? I think, I had to double check. I'm like, is Tarleton State Division I? And it is. So they play some good teams. So their weaknesses, I'll read you their weaknesses. And this is from Lance Zierlein. Sorry if I never heard Lance's last name, but people should know him. Lacks the suddenness to bypass and separate from press. Well, he's done that all practice now. And he did it last night. So I saw plenty of suddenness. It's separation I've seen all summer. Routes are inefficient with sloppy footwork. That I believe because of where he played. And I'm sure he's got to improve his technique. And that's probably the biggest hurdle for him.
Right.
So that's probably true. Rounds his routes off too much and drifts, which is a big thing with receivers. Really good receivers, the good route runners, the Devontae Smiths, the Justin Jefferson, they cut on a dime. Everything.
Yeah, but also there's also a subset of receivers that don't, like AJ Brown.
Oh, there's tons of them.
Yeah,
they round off their routes, and that's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, but for some people it works. Some people are good enough to make it work.
I wouldn't put AJ in that. AJ's a good route runner.
No,
he's not Devontae, but he's a good route runner. Generally, if at this level, if you round off your routes, it's not going to be too successful. High number of his catch tries are contested. Again, that goes back to the narrative that he doesn't create separation. I've seen the exact opposite. I think people saw now on film against backup players. You got to put that for the most part. But he was playing early too, and rarely scares cornerbacks during the drive phase. So generally receivers drive cornerbacks off with their explosiveness. So those were the weaknesses from NFL.com. I don't agree with a lot of them, especially the separation stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't let the guy to the combine. I don't know how much tape the guy who wrote that, saw of Darius Cooper.
Well, Lance has been doing. He's watching. He's watching them. He's not just making shit.
No,
up.
yeah, I know Lance does it, but Lance probably watched 500 guys ahead of Darius Cooper.
Probably. But hey, man, remember, like, okay, he's not playing against top tier. He's not out there against Derek Stingley or J.C. Horn or whatever, or Sauce Gardner. But, all the other second-tier receivers on both teams are playing the same environment, and he was the best one. And a lot of them are considered NFL players. So that's the context of it to me. And I think he's a good player. But there aren't a lot of 5'11", 210 is what they list him as. He's thick. So generally it's kind of a strange template for an NFL receiver.
Yep. Johnny Mac, let's move into the cornerbacks, man. Adoree Jackson and KELEE Ringo were the two biggest losers of the night, in my opinion. I didn't think they played good. KELEE had the big, obviously the splash play against them. I went back and watched some of the plays early in the game, and the one thing that did stick out about Ringo that you've been talking about all camp, John, is he gives up plays, but he is right there. He was right there. He just doesn't finish the plays off. You go over to Adoree Jackson. I thought he was even worse. I didn't think he was anywhere in the ballpark. I just didn't think he didn't look comfortable. He didn't look like he knew where to be out there. Very low, no physicality, very small. I didn't realize how small Adoree Jackson was. But what'd you see from those guys? Because I think that's the biggest concern on this football team right now. And I think it's starting to make a whole lot of sense why Monday night I was live talking about a trade for a cornerback coming in.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks volumes that the winner in the Eagles cornerback competition was Jacorian Bennett, because he didn't play. And people are still enamored by the thought of what he could be, and what we'll see. Obviously, this week he'll get on the practice field. They're going to be back out there on Saturday. So, we'll see with him. But it was not a positive first step for Ringo or Jackson, to say the least. And I do think, again, context is important. That's Jamar Chase out there. That isn't some, Charlie Jones or whoever's making plays on Adoree later in the game, whoever it was. That is arguably the best receiver in football. He won the Triple Crown last year. Most receptions, most receiving yards, most touchdowns. He is a phenomenal player. But as Nick Sirianni said after the game, and so did KELEE, to his credit, that's got to be a 16-yard gain, that touchdown. All right, you're giving up. That's a great player. You're giving up a play, which is the next play in the Eagles' mentality, 15-plus yards. But then you got to make the tackle, and you got to limit it. It's like a great scorer. The old, he's going to get his, but you got to stop it right there. And that's where, he out leveraged himself. He knew exactly what he did wrong. And obviously when Chase, maybe you can get away with that somewhat with some other receivers, but you're not going to get away with it with Jamar Chase. So you do have to put that context you aren't going to see, and you mentioned they're going to play some good quarterbacks and they're going to play some good receivers. Well, it doesn't get done. The quarterback wide receiver duo last night was #1 in the NFL, literally #1. The quarterback connection wide receiver, that's #1. You're going to see a lot of good ones. You're not going to see that one again. That's
Well,
the
how do you
top
think
of
he
it.
would fare better against I don't know, let's say like the Bucks are an interesting one because they got 3 good receivers. Now, they're not Jamar Chase, and I'm not saying they are, but I'm still questioning whether KELEE Ringo can hang with them. Because when you're cornerback too, I said this last night. This is how I'm thinking about it, and maybe this is the wrong way to think about it. You let me know if it is. Do you trust Ringo to be the role that Quinion was last year? The cornerback 2 in the zone Vic Fangio scheme. I
No,
I don't feel very good about that.
but I haven't trusted. I don't trust Jalen Hunt and Josh Sweat's role. I don't trust Morrow and Milton's role. I don't trust Ringo and whether you want to call it Slay's role, and you're right, Mitchell's in Slay's role. He's in Mitchell's role technically. I don't trust Trotter and N'Kobe's role. I don't trust
So some of the
Sidney
players you
Brown.
just named, though, John, doesn't that mean we need better corners this year? Like last year was so complimentary from the sense of corners were so good in coverage. The edge rushers got great pressure. That created the perfect tandem of defensive football. Pressure on quarterback, nowhere to throw the ball. You create sacks, you create turnovers, create all these different things. All right, edge rusher not going to be as good this year. You better have a lockdown corner because it's a compounding effect. If you can't get home and you can't cover, you're going to have a long night.
Well, and I get it because, cornerback's a position where he was out on an island against his best receiver in football and got destroyed. So I get it. That's obvious to everybody. They see it. Some of the other stuff isn't as noticeable, but that's what I'm saying. I don't trust any of those players to replace the players they're expected to replace. Now, some will probably play better than I expect. Some will play worse. But yeah, if that's your gauge, there, my opinion is, well, you got to gauge everybody that way. And do you have confidence in those other guys? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think I think everybody's in that same category. But yeah, I've said, and I'm a big KELEE guy, but if you heard me, I've said pretty consistently they're going to have big problems trying to replace Slay, and I don't think people realize it.
Yeah.
And again, it's more of a layered, as you point out. Quinion will be cornerback 1, which is fine, but
Might be
then
different if he's traveling. Might change the dynamic a little bit of the room, but yeah, I can't
yeah.
say I
Well,
feel
I
good
mean,
about
Christian
Ringo. I
Clark.
know it doesn't sound like you're as out on him as most, but I don't know, John. I feel like you got a unique opportunity with a year where you're going into a year coming off a Super Bowl win where at large, most people think you have a team built to go back to the Super. Even someone objective like yourself who doesn't care whether they win or lose says, yeah, objectively, this is one of the top rosters in football. They're in the conversation. You're going to go into this year with KELEE Ringo at cornerback?
Well, you can't have everything, and they're trying to bring competition to bring, whether it's Bennett, whether Adoree starts playing better, whether Eli Ricks gets involved.
I think Eli Ricks looked not great, but okay. I mean, I don't know. He
Well,
might.
I think and by the way, I think that changes if he catches it and takes it in. Everybody's thrilled and saying Eli Ricks, Eli Ricks, Eli Ricks. That's what
He had the one play he got burnt bad, didn't he? Didn't he get beat?
Yeah. But that's it. Vic said it 5 times last week in his press conference. He was like, got to eliminate the negative plays. Everybody's focused on the splash plays. And the problem is KELEE had a negative splash play. So it's so obvious to people. But I think overall, and I'm going to be interested to see the PFF grades. And I don't know. And I haven't even rewatched the game because I had to get some sleep. So I have to rewatch the game. But just my first impression was, I think now by no means, because I think they both played poorly, but I think Ringo was better than Jackson in that game. Was my first sort of feeling just watching it live. I don't think Adoree played well.
No, I didn't either.
So I don't think Ringo played well either. Again, and to your point, yeah, I've said it pretty consistently. I mean, Uche and Ojulari got a ton of reps. Really didn't do much.
No, didn't do much.
Think about the deference players. Think about Jelix Hunt's involved with the deference players. That's crazy to me. That's crazy. And people can look at it as positive. Guy played 200 and whatever snaps in the
I
regular
kind of thought
season
he should have
last
been
year.
out there last night.
But they're so concerned about getting him hurt. That I guarantee that was a Howie decision. It's like, no, we can't play Jelix. Why can't you play Jelix? Well, because God forbid.
Yeah, right.
So I don't disagree with Howie's sentiment for what he has, but that's a guy that needs to be on the field and getting reps, and you don't feel comfortable giving him reps because of what's behind him. So there's still more issues on defense than I would be comfortable with, and I'm sure Vic feels the same way.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Johnny Mac. John, good stuff there. Let's continue to roll on. Those were the two biggest concerns of the game, or the two biggest negatives, right? Is the Cooper, or is the not Cooper, is the Ringo and Adoree Jackson nights, you would say?
Yeah, from a starting perspective, I think lower key because of the splashiness, but I think edge is similar because I didn't see much.
There was zero pressure for sure. Ty Robinson got some pressure here and there. Right?
Ty did a nice job.
Yeah. Wondering if he's a game player, John, not a practice guy.
Well, he better turn it. I don't think that's the case. I just think he's a rookie and he learning as thing. And that to me, now he's a rookie, so it's a little bit different. Like they probably, they want him to play. They traded Thomas Booker, so now there's more of an urgency to get him out there. So they gave him a shitload. He was out there in the fourth quarter. They gave him a shitload of reps. I wish NFL would put him up the rep count, but I'm going to be interested to see how high it was. And I thought he did a good job overall, and showed some signs. So that's a positive.
Yeah, that's a positive. The excitement is that preseason game number 2, which is not this Saturday tomorrow, but next week Saturday, is that we get to probably see Jakorian Bennett, somebody we haven't seen yet, and all sights will be on you, Jakorian. So start to get ready because you'll have an opportunity of what I think to maybe put yourself in that conversation to be the starting corner. We will see. John, plenty of super chats we'll get to in a second. Appreciate everybody for being here. Don't forget to hit that like button. The football season is back, everybody. Johnny Mac, keep rolling along. I want to talk about Jahad Campbell. Obviously, he was the one guy that everybody was super excited to see coming into the game. I didn't think he did everything great. I thought needs some polish, and you can tell he's a rookie. He had the one penalty as well, but he was all over the place in terms of, he was always around the ball whenever it was near him. And I think that's a good thing when you're a linebacker. You want that instinct, and he has the athleticism to match it. What'd you think of Jahad Campbell last night?
Well, nobody questions his athleticism, sort of the opposite of what we were talking about with Darius Cooper. He's got, everything from the standpoint of what they look for. Measurables and things like that, and obviously physical gifts, the length, the athleticism, the speed. My concern is he didn't start. Smile Munden started, and that was started to be a trend about 2 or 3 practices before the game, is that Smile was getting more reps than Jahad. So that tells me that Vic isn't happy with how he's picking things up. So that's more of my concern. Like, how quickly is he going to be able to pick things up? And I think that's sort of trending in a negative direction. And I'm more confident today than I had been that, I thought ultimately, well, if Campbell's going to be out there, he's going to be a week 1 starter. I don't know how it develops. But I think it's going to be Zach and Trot week 1. I think it's heading that direction. and I think Trot had a solid game. He's not, he had a chance for an interception as well. Should have brought it in.
Yeah.
But I thought he was much more impressive. And, he's been here. This is his second year. His dad's a linebacker. He's got, he's very instinctive player in college. So, that, and I don't know how many people noticed that, but Smile Munden started, not Jahad Campbell. That's what I said last night.
Right.
And Smile had his own.
Campbell came in the second series, right?
Yeah. And Smile, and it'll be interesting to see the rep counts when they come out because they both played a decent amount. But,
yeah, right.
And sometimes they played together. So, but Smile had his own welcome to the NFL moment with Mac McWilliams, another rookie, when the tight end dragged him into the end zone. Those guys got to get more physical. So, I thought it was a mixed bag with Campbell, but you always see the stuff that stands out: length, athleticism, range. And when he figures it out, he's going to be a big player. My concern is if he never figures it out. We just went through a linebacker that everybody thought was great for years and years and years and never figured it out. And he was the fifth pick in the draft. And that's Devin White.
Right.
So, long way to go, I think, from the technique, understanding, fundamentals, all that kind of stuff. And that obviously is very big with Vic.
John, you're to the safety spot. Sidney Brown, what'd you see from him? Got that injury. Not sure what that meant from the telecast, John. I'm not sure if you were, obviously, I don't think you watched the TV, but, he made the hit. Doesn't wrap up. I don't know why he doesn't wrap up. Such a strong physical player. Doesn't wrap up.
Nobody tackles well because they don't tackle.
Yeah, they don't tackle. Teaching them how to I mean, I played football 3 years of my life. I mean, the first thing I was told was, "You keep your head up and wrap." It's like he doesn't do that. But anyway, he takes the hit. It's a good hit. Bounces right off the running back. Kind of goes down, gets up, and immediately goes like this. Points at his shoulder, and then he came off the field. I never saw him again. So I don't know if it was an injury. I don't know if he has anything serious. I don't know. Maybe he just popped it out and they popped it right back in. I'm not really sure. What'd you see from him on the field? And
I not that I was hoping, but I thought maybe it was they were fearing a concussion because of the hit. But yeah, I didn't see it. I have to watch it again. So you probably got a better view than me. And not that it
looked like he pointed right to his shoulder immediately. So I didn't know if something happened to it or if you heard anything about that.
Well, the problem is with preseason is they don't have to announce injuries at all. They don't have to give you updates. So Sydney, Elijah Cooks got carted off. Kenyon Green got carted off. So we'll when I get off the air, start texting around to some agents, and you sometimes you can get updates that way. But yeah, there's no like in the regular season, you have to give injury updates, and you don't have to do that in preseason. So we're kind of in the dark with Sydney, with Elijah, with Kenyon Green, other than those two got carted off. And Kenyon got hurt and was able to walk off on his own, then got carted out. Elijah got carted out. And that's, he's had a great camp, but now the Cooper's he's in deep shape, especially if he's going to be out for a while, and hopefully none of them are serious. But yeah, I mean, if Sydney misses time, it could have the same effect as what it's had with Drew, who missed time. And he seemed to be locking down the job, but if he's got to miss a week or 10 days, Drew's coming back. I'm sure he'll be back in the mix for Cleveland. That'll put him back in the conversation.
Yeah, we'll see. Did you think he was all right when he was out there, or in the snaps he did get?
Well, it's kind of
good or bad, or is it just kind of a mute performance?
It's kind of back and forth. The whole defense was terrible in the first two drives. So, he was
Burrow was surgical. He was like 9 and 10 or something for 120
exactly.
touchdowns and a 157.5 rating, damn near perfect.
So the whole defense was just off its kilter, off on its heels. They didn't know what was hitting them. So in those first two drives, yeah, it wasn't great. Again, mainly the Eagles backups with a few people mixed in. But I was surprised just how many Eagles defenders didn't play. Obviously it was Carter, it was Nolan, it was Jordan Davis, it was Morrow, it was Jalix Hunt, it was, you know, obviously Zach Bond, who's injured but wouldn't have played even if he was healthy. Quignon, Reed, like the vast majority of their defense didn't play either. So, and you had the competition guys in there who generally didn't play well. But I think Sydney was fine once the onslaught of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase took a seat.
Right.
And then I think he was fine.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, any other quick names? We're going to take our first commercial break. Still plenty to talk about. We're going to talk to Caden Steele in hour number 2, who was at the game as well. So we'll get his takeaways from what he saw out there. Any other players, John, come to mind that maybe we didn't talk about last night or today? I do think some people made some good plays. Some people kind of stuck out a little bit. Not a great showing from the quarterbacks after Tanner McKee. I thought DTR and Kyle McCord really didn't look great. Just kind of looked like a deer in the headlights out there. Any other players, John, that stuck out to you, both good or bad, either good or bad?
Well, I think good was Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, that interception was crazy awesome.
Well, not only the play before that, he got a sack. It was
right.
the best pass rush of the day from an edge rusher, and it got taken off the board by a illegal contact penalty down the field. I think it was AJ Woods. But it was a great. That dude, like he's like, I compare him to Anias on offense because Anias had the big punt return. He can play receiver. He's a manufactured touch kind of guy. He can do a lot of different things. That's why he's going to make the team. Patrick can rush. He can play off-ball linebacker if you need him to. And he's one of their best special teams player. But we went through this last year for whatever reason. Like he plays better than everybody, but they want to keep the guys with the upside. And I'm not sure this year to have guys with upsides that need to be kept over Patrick Johnson, to be blunt. Because he's out there making plays. Nobody else is.
Right. Uche and Ojulari were nowhere to be found last night. Yeah.
And Antoine Powell-Ryland hasn't done much. So I mean, I'm sure they'll cut Patrick again, unfortunately. But if you needed snaps, he's going to give you competent snaps, and he's going to make a play every once in a while. Again, not a position I want to be in on the edge. I'd like to get better. I'm not sure you are better, just because the presumption is Josh Uche did this in 2022, or Azeez Ojulari was good at Georgia. Those guys have not stood out, not only in the game, but in practice. Uche's had a couple moments here and there, but certainly not consistent. And even in practice, I think Patrick's a better practice player. Maybe if you're a better practice player and you show up and you're a better game player, maybe you're better.
Yeah, right. Remember last year what happened with Patrick Johnson? They cut him, kind of played the waiver wire thing. He got picked up by the Giants, and now he's back this year. We'll see what they do. Let's go to some super chats before we get to our first commercial break. Appreciate everybody for being here. Hit that like button. Great shows last night on the channel, and appreciate all the great viewership that we've had. You guys are awesome, and it's good to be back in Eagles season mode. Prince says, I watched the game again. Ringo is terrible at the fundamentals. A simple breakdown he can't even do correctly. Darius Cooper is a demon. Sign him. I agree about Darius Cooper. I do not want that guy to leave.
Well, he's already signed, but
no, I mean when the cuts come, I want him on the freaking team. Yeah. I like that player.
A simple breakdown. One addition against Jamar Chase, which is not a simple breakdown. Yeah, I mean, technique, and Zander talked about it with tackling with Sydney. Yeah, it's a problem. And the Eagles work on it, and that's one of the things because they don't have a lot of technique. They don't tackle. They don't have live periods, and then all of a sudden, one of the best athletes in the world is in the open field, and you got to break it down. It's not as simple as it looks. That's my biggest issue with fans. You don't look at the other side, man. Shamar Chase. But again, he's got to do a better job, which he acknowledged and Nick acknowledged as well.
Good stuff there. Prince, thanks for the super chat, brother. Cody checks in. What's up, Cody? Cooper reminds me of a shorter Abe Bolden. That's actually not a bad comp. Not a bad comp for
yeah, that's a better one. Big physical. Again, I hate the comps against great players, but it's a better from a physical standpoint. But Anquan was I never know if people are doing the physical comp, which I like, or the player comp, which I don't like. Because that's a great player for a long time, Anquan Bolden.
Yeah, good stuff there, Cody. Appreciate it, brother. Brian Pump checking in. There he is. What's up, Pumper? Say nice things about Project 89. J-Mac, you eat your words about Tanner Delphia. I told you he has a bazooka strapped to his arm. Elite ball spinner.
Oh, well, I do the over. Now you gotta reel him back. You gotta reel him back. I've seen it's the best backup in football. He's a starting level quarterback. Maybe if you can get the number 1 overall pick, I'd trade him. The trade talk is starting again. You got to reel him back, but he did play well. That's, and to me, again, he's not Brett Favre, Bumper. I don't know what you're looking at. He's not Brett Favre, but he can make every NFL throw. So that's not an issue. But to me, the strength of his game last night was elevating others. To your point about Johnny Wilson, that's the best Johnny Wilson has ever looked. And giving somebody a chance to make plays, putting the ball, high pointing the ball, because Johnny's got to get a lot of contested catches, and he was making them last night. And him distributing the ball, putting it in the right place, and elevating the guys around him. And Tanner himself compares his game to being a point guard. Like he's not Brett Favre. He's process, get the ball where it's supposed to go, and put it on the numbers and let the playmakers do what they need to do. And he did a great job last night.
Yeah, good stuff, Pump. Appreciate you being here, brother. As always, one of our best supporters. We love you, Pump. Eduardo checking in, member for 13 months. Look at that, Eduardo. Thank you, my man. He says, Madden needs to throw some respect on my QB2's name. We have a problem at CB2. Sydney needs to learn how to tackle better or he'll have a short season. I agree with all the above.
Well, I disagree with the Madden because you guys got to stop paying attention to Madden ratings because they don't freaking matter.
Hey, don't blame us. The Eagles are posting after the game last night. Hey, at Madden NFL, I think you got to adjust.
Well, and Tanner made a little joke about it as well. But again, if people take that stuff seriously, maybe don't take it as seriously. And Eagles social media is just trying to get engagement. That's their job.
All right, but I'm saying they do create you know what I mean? They do permeate the narrative that you're talking about and make it a bigger thing than it is. And players do care about that stuff, John. I think you're wrong about that. I think players really care.
What do you mean? I've never said they didn't care about it.
Well,
I said they shouldn't care about it.
Yeah.
I said they shouldn't. Now AJ on that same video was a little bit low, and AJ took the raise. All right, whatever. Now, some guys are obsessed by it. I agree. It's bizarre. Well, they grew up in a video game world, and it's a big thing to them. But Madden knows nothing about Tanner McKee. Their mentality, he's never played really. So let's give him a 60, whatever they gave him. That's That's the thought process.
They had McCord higher. They better go and adjust that because I don't think Kyle McCord quite looked as good as Tanner McKee.
And again, Kyle McCord, why? We talked about that the other day. Why? Because he was a great player at Ohio State, and they know it. And he was a great player at Syracuse, and he set the ACC record for passing. So he's pretty good. Let's throw him at a 70, whatever. I just spent way too much time talking about it. But
I love how you hate the Madden ratings, but you do have a nice explanation for how they came up with the Madden ratings.
Well, no, I have no idea how they came up with them.
Well, you keep giving me the answer on why
it's not an answer. It's a guess. It's not an answer.
Yeah, well, you're probably right.
It's my speculation.
There you go.
That they know Kyle McCord from Ohio State, and they know him from Syracuse, and they don't know shit about Tanner McKee because he played in college at 7 o'clock at night, and they're probably asleep on it.
Yeah. Tanner Delphia, put some respect on his name, Madden. Rich Nutt, member for 12 months. Thank you, brother. Thanks for being here. Rich, thanks for being a member. Any chance of Dotson as trade bait, given the young guy's talent? Get some defensive backs.
Well, they already made a trade for a corner. I don't know how many, how many corners they're going to bring in. If they can get an edge rusher, I've talked about that since the spring. That's a low key trade candidate, not because the Eagles don't like him, not because he's not a good player, but because if some of these guys develop, and at the time I was more on Terrace Marshall than Darius Cooper, but now it's more Darius Cooper. I mean, they know he's not going to be here next year. So this is
how big of a fall off you think it'd be if they I'm not saying he's a better player than Dotson, but in theory, if they moved on from Dotson and put Darius in that spot, kept Anais and Johnny as the roles that they're cut out.
Yeah, we're getting too hyped on preseason. But the problem is it wouldn't be Darius Cooper. It would be Anais or Johnny Wilson. And that's a significant drop-off. So I would not be a fan of doing that. But if they need, hey, guess what?
I don't see Anais Smith doing what Darius Cooper can do. Now, maybe I'm overreacting on one preseason game, but so be it.
You are somewhat overreacting on one preseason. I'm telling you, if the Eagles did that, and they might, again, I'm talking like 5-10%. I'm not talking about likely or anything of that nature. But I've been talking about him as a low-key trade candidate. If more somebody like Terrace Marshall stayed healthy and continued to play well. And then the drop-off would be less significant in their mind. They still look at Darius Cooper. I get it. You guys are coming off seeing him play the way he played in a preseason game, but they still see him as more of a developmental prospect. It steps to it. Jahan's very, he might have not lived up to his hype as the 16th overall pick, but I think you saw last night he was great. He was the wide receiver 1. And he was only out there for a short period of time. Tanner McKee threw it twice on the opening drive. Both to Jahan Dotson, I think, for 27 yards. Dude can play. But to the point of the trade part of it is, if they're really worried about whether it's corner or whether it's edge rusher, and they say, all right, you got to give up something to get something of value. But I don't, to me, that was Terrace Marshall's lane. And Terrace was playing great early, and then he got hurt.
All right.
And maybe he can come back, and maybe that can kickstart. But right now, I don't see it.
Good stuff, Rich Nutt. Thanks for the for the chat, brother. Rich again follows up. Justin Simmons watched J-Mac. I'm waiting to hear about that shoulder because it did look like, John, on the screen he went like this. Immediately.
Until Justin Simmons signs somewhere, and I'm sure he's waiting for that injury, probably in Philadelphia. So until he signs somewhere else, I'm not taking it off the table. But I think the Eagles would prefer that Sydney or Drew would do enough to win that job. Obviously, injuries would change that pretty quickly. So if it's something significant, yeah, I wouldn't close the door. I wouldn't close the door.
Not my favorite option, but I do agree, Rich. It's probably makes you feel a little bit better than at least I do right now. Worst behavior checks in. What's up, Worst? As impressive as Cooper was, this team barely uses wide receiver 3. Trade him for some DB depth. That's the area. I don't think you're getting much on a trade for. I don't think you're going to get much on a trade for him. But
yeah, yeah, come on. I mean, the guy was an undrafted free agent. Everybody had a shot at. You're not getting anything on the trade market.
Now, Dotson, I'll consider because I think Darius Cooper can fucking play. You know, sometimes someone shows you who they are. I'm the eternal optimist in me says I'm going to believe that kid can play, baby. I like Darius Cooper, John. I'm starting the campaign for him to make the team.
Well, I'm the one who started it on this show, and
yes,
I wrote about it 2 days
but I can't
before.
See him. How, you know, I can only, I can't.
No, I'm not saying that, but then I feel like, well, now I got to roll it back. I mean, come on. Don't overstate it. That's what I'm saying. He's doing a nice job for an undrafted rookie that everybody overlooked.
Guy was cooking last night, Johnny Mac. Come on, man. Darius Cooper. Come on. I like it. The worst behavior.
It's like the same thing with Morrow. I wrote Morrow was the most improved player on the Eagles. I gave him the vote for the upward trajectory and Jimmy's thing. And then they're going to scale it back because the expectations are crazy.
Yeah.
Same thing with Darius Cooper. I'm like, well, keep an eye on this kid. And now it gets to this point. I got to scale it back. And then I went bad. It's like, then I'm like the hater. And I'm like, I'm the guy who told everybody he's doing wonderful things.
Well, listen, John, the top 2 receivers don't play. We think about they're going to keep 5. Hey, I'm looking at the backups. That guy was the best one of the bunch. You would think he'd make the team. Now, I get it. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it. And we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, I'll tell you who's making the team. And I've said it for a long time. And I'll say it again. Johnny fucking Wilson and Anais Smith.
Johnny makes more sense to me than Anais, but
whatever. Get used to it. They're making the team. Anais just had a 46-yard punt return.
That was a great punt return by him, man. That was awesome to watch.
Actually, you know what? He had trouble catching it. But
yeah, well, he kind of went back and turned around to get it. Yeah, but he made some nice.
That's my concern with Anais because sometimes it's not clean. And to be a punt returner, you got to be clean. But it was a great return after he did catch
Harris
it.
Checking in. He says, body-wise, Cooper is similar size to Jalen Reason, who was 5'11", 200. Who's Jalen Reason?
I don't know, but there's Anquan was a good one. I saw Steve Smith compare who's in the Hall of Fame. By the way.
Yeah, Cody said just by the physical when he was the one who said about Anquan.
Yeah, I mean, those are some guys who are a good physical comparison that a lot of people will remember and know. But it's rare, to have that frame. And that's part of the reason why I probably went undrafted, because it's rare.
He was saying Rager. Jalen Rager.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right. Again, Rager, because of what went on, and obviously, to say the least, didn't live up to his draft status, to put it mildly. Again, he was a phenomenal athlete. I think people don't realize. I think there's this weird revisionist history with Jalen Rager that if the Eagles didn't take him where they took him, that he would have went in the second round or the third round.
He was going next.
Yeah. I wasn't going next, but he was going to New Orleans. I don't know what Minnesota would have pivoted to, but he was going to New Orleans. He was going right away. He was a big time prospect and just didn't, one of the things I say all the time is way too many people think you draft a good player or a bad player. And, player development is a real thing. You don't draft a good player or bad. Sometimes you do. Sometimes some guys are so good that they're going to be a star no matter what. But there's far more where guys have to develop, and you have to develop them. And I think Rager lost confidence early, and shit goes downhill quickly.
Yeah. Darius Cooper has arrived, Johnny Mac. Penn says, Cooper, Wilson looked great. Tanner McKee doing? Definitely. I mean, Tanner McKee had
I said that was the most, to me, elevated the people around him.
Yeah, it's your first comment, John, about McKee. Elevated everybody.
Yeah.
I like it. I thought his pocket awareness for a big, I don't want to call him unathletic, but he's obviously his skill set is not, playing on the move. I thought he had
that's
awareness.
One of the things I really have never seen with Tanner. And I think if he ever has to play, and let's be honest, you hope he never has to play, at least for an extended period, but at least here, obviously, because that means injury to Jalen. But I've never seen him under siege with a big time pass rush where he has to move and he has to do some things. And again, he's not going to be like Jalen Hurts, but you need functional mobility. And I don't know if that question's been answered yet. But everything that, when he's got time to process and do things, he's proven he can play.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought he looked really good last night. Good game for Tanner McKee. Last one here, Mike Berghorst checking in. What's up, Mike? Good to see you, my guy. Haven't seen you in a bit, Mike. Hope you're having a good summer, and I hope you're ready for the Eagles season. He says, do you think the other starting cornerback is on the team now, or will Howie get someone before the season starts? Maybe Jacorian Bennett. Johnny Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's on the team now. I don't think that's a good thing, but I mean, he made his move. He made his move at corner. Like you're not trading for
you're not bringing in 3 corners and all that. Yeah, it doesn't work.
I mean, he made his move at corner, so it's going to be Ringo, it's going to be Jackson, or it's going to be Bennett. And I wouldn't be comfortable with that at this stage.
We'll see what happens on that front. Ringo's obviously the talk of the town in terms of a negative perspective. Cooper and Tanner are the talk of the town on the positive side of the football. We'll continue to break down the game last night. Birds did get the win, 34-27, for whatever that's worth. Obviously, as I like what John said, though, they got a culture. They have a habit of winning in everything that they do, and I think that's a good thing. I wanted to see them win, and they did. Chris Albright, one more chat here before the break, says, hey, J-Mac, do you have any intel on the on-field pre-practice portion of the open practice? I know the times got changed, but not sure why.
The times of the you're talking about the times of the little walkthrough type things they do before practice. I don't know exactly what it's thought. It was a little bit later. Yeah. I mean, for all Nick's, he's probably trying to confuse people whether, I don't know why he would care, but what if because the starters dressed and went through a typical pregame warm up, and then went back into street clothes and just watched the game. So they do that a lot. They're trying to get used to the pregame part of it and get gearing up for the game. And so if that's what you're talking about, and I think there's it's a much more lax atmosphere in preseason. Like the NFL demands times, like when you get to a regular season game, there's a clear schedule of everything pregame. And that doesn't really exist in the preseason. So things can be a little bit more lax.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. Great stuff. Good win last night for the Birds. A lot of good to take away, a couple negative things to take away. We talked about them all here on the show. We'll continue to break it down, continue to see what's going on. We'll get the schedule for the weekend or for the upcoming Eagles events. We'll do all that. Coming up next here on Birds 365. Don't forget to hit that like button, everybody. Appreciate you all for being here. Your comments down below in the chat are always good. We appreciate those. And hit subscribe to the channel if you're new. We appreciate it. We'll be live all year long covering this football team. We'll be right back, everybody, in 3 minutes on Birds 365.
Welcome to the